A Tall and Small Collection, Season 2, Chapter 28. Forward Together. Excitement, nervousness, freedom. The silence finally shattered, tension released like lightning in a bottle. The path forward was uncharted territory, but the unknown could now be faced with the pair of them. Giving in to the feelings that, for so long, had kept his heart pounding in his chest, Soren let himself sink into the pressure of Ashlyn's fingers against his back as her impeccably soft lips pressed against his chest. She completely dwarfed him in size, but love isn't measured by how tall or small a person is. Eternity wouldn't have been long enough to stay there, unmoving, entwined in her fingers. But all good things must come to an end. They separated, but only just barely enough for Ashlyn to dip her head forward toward him. Soren lifted his own head and kissed her again, noticing the glistening tears of joy slipping down her cheeks and lining her face. A smile tugged at his lips as they pulled away simultaneously, both speechless from the moment. Instead, they gazed into one another's eyes, unable to stop themselves from smiling. It was Soren, however, who ended up breaking the silence with his signature chuckle. Not what you were expecting? Our talk, I mean, he asked, hazel eyes taking in every fragment of twinkling light in Ashlyn's blue-gray eyes. No, she smiled. Not at all, but I wouldn't change it. She wiped off her tear-stained face with her left hand, relief evident on her face. I'm sorry for not saying something when I woke up this morning. I did have some things to take care of, apologized Soren, to which Ashlyn shook her head. No, I'm just glad you said anything at all, Ashlyn said as she gently pressed the pads of her fingers into Soren's back again. Then a thought came to her, which made her chuckle. I wonder what the Bobbins will say. At this, Soren sighed and placed his hands on his hips, his eyes rolling slightly. Ray will call me out on it, and Dorian will just look at us like he knew the whole time, replied Soren. Ashlyn felt her eyes widen. They knew? She asked, feeling her cheeks pinken in embarrassment. Had it been that obvious? No, not really anyway, reassured Soren. But Ray does seem to have a sixth sense about these things, and Dorian knows how to play it cool. Ashlyn let out a sigh of relief. Good. Speaking of which, when do we tell them? Asked Ashlyn. At this, Soren laughed and gave Ashlyn's finger, which was still pressed against his back, an affectionate tap with a loose fist. As if we could keep it from them, he smiled. We barely keep it from each other. Ashlyn looked away bashfully, her heart still fluttering through backflip after backflip. True. I don't know how I managed this long. I guess when I heard about your daughter and Lucy, I just wanted to give you space and time, said Ashlyn. And I was afraid too. I was trying to figure out how and when to tell you, or at least hint at it, while trying to figure out how us, would work. Then everything that happened with the attack yesterday, I couldn't contain it anymore. Sorry. That was a lot. I'm still jittery. I can tell, Soren teased. Your cheeks are flushed, and I can feel your pulse racing in your fingertips. Ashlyn playfully bumped Soren's shoulder with her thumb. He staggered a few steps, but was against her fingers again in no time. And only you would know that second one, so I'm feeling pretty good, she teased back. Soren nodded and let his body relax into the warmth of Ashlyn's hand again. Fair. And to your other point about us. Gosh, that sounds so good to say out loud. I think we'll figure it out together, said Soren. I think we can do anything as long as we're a team. As long as I'm with you, it doesn't matter how challenging something is. Ashlyn, feeling tears once again creeping into the corners of her eyes, nodded stiffly as she fought back the urge to cry at Soren's words. I guess someone has to be the first. If we are, that is. It's not that it matters, said Ashlyn. Soren, at this point, stepped forward and rotated his body so it was pressed against the side of Ashlyn's thumb, draping his arm over the crook it made with the rest of her hand, and squeezed affectionately. What matters is that I love you, and nothing is changing that. Choked up again and completely overwhelmed, Ashlyn leaned forward and kissed the top of Soren's head tenderly. Pulling away after a moment, she whispered, I love you too. The sun sank lower, casting the final rays of golden light against the horizon before slipping out of sight. While the sun set on this very long and emotionally exhausting day, a whole new life was just dawning. When they composed themselves, Soren once again slipped into Ashlyn's pocket, and they made their way back down the elevator to Ashlyn's room. Sure enough, the moment the pair entered the apartment, settling on the couch with the others and smiling at each other, Ray and Dorian exchanged knowing looks. Then, just as Soren predicted, Ray was the first to speak up. I knew it! I told you, Soren, didn't I call it? I called it, right, Dorian? Ray cheered. I'm so happy for you two. It's about time, too. Dorian, grinning from ear to ear, continued to wrestle Maisie while giving Soren and Ashlyn teasing glances, as if their feelings were obvious and inevitable. The family spent the rest of the evening making dinner and watching movies, all the while snuggling on the couch and having finger wrestling matches when they switched from one movie to the next. The Bobbins and Maisie, finally sitting down late in the evening, stayed cupped in Ashlyn's hands while Soren took a seat in the crook of Ashlyn's neck. For the first time in days, there was some semblance of peace among the family, and all of them were determined to keep it that way.